Hey everybody, it's Herb Kohler. Hope you're doing well. Just getting caught up for January 2026, getting the YouTube channel up and running. And so I figured this would be a good time to talk about my story, my history in trying to battle obesity. Uh, just a little bit of a background. I've been struggling with body weight since I was a young teenager. Obesity is something that's very prevalent in my family. And so I have spent many years trying to figure out how to better manage my health and my body weight and just to just feel and look better. This was a real struggle for me when I was in high school, caused a lot of confidence issues, a lot of self-image issues. And so because of that, and because I was so determined to not put up with it, I've spent multiple decades basically being my own diet guinea pig, trying to figure out what works for me, trying to sift through all the mixed messages and confusing information that's out there about what really works for people. So I'm going to take you through my story, let you know how I got to where I am today, how I finally broke that 100-pound mark and have kept the weight off for several years now. So, in the 90s, when I was a young teenager, everything was about calorie counting, low fat dieting, and portion control. And, this is the age where we had things like, the point counting system that was introduced by Weight Watchers. Slim Fast protein shakes were becoming a big thing because they were low calorie, low fat. They tasted horrible, but it was the best type of shake that was around at the time. They had lean cuisines, which apparently are not lean when you eat three or four of them at a time. And then this is also the period of time where the so-called experts were saying that the country crock hydrogenated oils that makes margarine and things like that, that was somehow better for us than just eating the types of fats that have always been in the human diet. So now we know better, or so we thought, but now we're kind of going back in that direction with all the processed seed oils and things like that people are still consuming very large quantities of. So the bottom line is 90s was very tough for me because I had to choose between a diet that made me miserable, that was constantly distracting me with hunger and cravings and things like that. Not very good options, not very good advice was given to me at the time. So I continued to struggle with my weight. And then when I was more towards a young adult, coming out of high school, I Atkins and keto were becoming a bigger thing. People were sick of the deprivation dieting, always hungry, always having cravings, all the foods being bland from the lack of fat. So it was a very attractive option to go the opposite direction. And so people were like, "Well, good. I'd rather have meat and cheese and bacon and mayonnaise all day long, and that sounds a lot better than this low-fat dieting stuff that's a real pain." So I gave that a try, and at first it really was better. What it did teach me is that the best diet to be on, the one that's easiest to stick with, is the one that satisfies you. So what low carb did that low fat failed to do for most people was that it introduced a diet that people could eat less on, lose weight on, and not be constantly hungry and miserable all the time. So because of that, it was easier to stick with, and I did get pretty good results at first. I did drop quite a bit of weight at first, but then what would happen is I started to see plateauing and yo-yo effects, and then also really having problems with mineral absorption and muscle cramping. Even when I was trying to take a lot more salt, magnesium, it didn't really do that much because The issue wasn't that I wasn't eating it. The issue was that it wasn't being absorbed properly. So as I continued to rely on a low carb diet, it became less and less effective. I kept plateauing at higher and higher weights, and then when I got frustrated and went back to carbs, I would blow up like a balloon. So that was not sustainable either. And so later on, after many years of pivoting between low fat, low carb, not caring, I started to see a lot of people get pretty good results on carnivore diet, particularly all red meat. I had started reading into how red meat was superior in a lot of ways to other types of meats. The fat profile was better. There was a lot of nutritional benefits from beef. So and I like steak, so it was not so bad for me. I enjoyed. I never really got sick of steak. I was eating, ground beef, sirloin, skirt steak, chuck steak, all sorts of cuts of beef, and I did lose a lot of weight. Out of all the low carb attempts that I had made, by far the red meat carnivore diet was the most effective. Later on, I realized it's because not all fats are created equal. When I was on the keto diet, it was pretty much any fat was a good fat. So I was eating lots of seed oil based stuff. I was having soybean oil based salad dressings on my salad. I was having mayonnaise. I was having fatty pork and fatty chicken, which in those animals, they don't break down the commercial feed seed oils the same way that cows and lamb and goat and all those animals do. So that distinction made a huge difference. That was the first point in which I realized that not all calories, not all fats are created equal, and that nutrient profiles are is at least as important as portion control and calorie counting. So yeah, I lost about 80 pounds. I had even better satiety with the red meat carnivore diet than even the keto, because I wasn't eating all the seed oils anymore that stimulate cravings. But the problem was that after a while, the muscle cramps came back, so I was still having mineral absorption issues. And then I also got really weak. My muscles just were not agreeing with me. It was harder and harder to perform at the gym, and I started to get the ammonia sweats. So I would work out, and I'd smell like Windex, and that's a pretty bad sign because it means that there's some protein overload going on. You're not able to handle all the excess amino acids, and so your body's trying to excrete them in the form of ammonia. So that's not a good sign. That was something that really alarmed me. I don't think any diet should entail smelling like Windex. So I needed to find something more sustainable. So then I read how you can still have a lot of the benefits of a carnivore diet by going back to more just kind of ancestral animal-based diet. So I did add back some dairy, eggs, and fruit. I think adding the fruit was the biggest thing because my body was able to get access to some carbohydrates again, and so the muscle cramps resolved. I was able to lose more weight, and I didn't smell like Windex when I worked out anymore. So that was all great. That I felt pretty good on that diet, but I still took it a bit further, so what happened was I was still about, I would say, 20 pounds heavier than I would have liked, and I was trying to figure out how to lose that last bit of stubborn fat, and I started reading into how if you've had a history of low-carb dieting, there's a very strong likelihood that you're not metabolizing carbohydrates correctly. And if you're eating a lot of protein, it's kind of keeping you stuck in that state. So what happens is you're eating a lot of fats and proteins. Your mitochondria is burning that instead of glucose. It Those fuels are not as cleanly burned, and so you start to create an imbalance in the mitochondria where you're burning your fuels, and then what happens is you start to become more insulin resistant. It damages your glucose metabolism. It makes it really hard to get lean. You start storing more body fat again. So I fixed my metabolism by going on a protein restriction diet that was very high starch. And the idea was we're going to take some of the other problematic fuels out of the equation, at least temporarily. So we pulled back on protein, pulled back on fat, and it was just a very high starch diet with maybe just a dab of some saturated fat and some fruit mixed in. And it really made sense because the whole time I was low carb dieting, I was kind of like, well, why didn't carbs ever used to make people overweight? And, you'd hear things like, well, people used to be more active, but that didn't really pan out because even elderly, sedentary portions of populations in where they ate high starch diets, those people were also doing better. So it wasn't just a physical activity thing. And really, our bodies are designed to burn glucose. Overwhelmingly, that's what a lot of the research shows. So the reason keto and carnivore work is because if you have a broken metabolism where you can't burn glucose, well, you're not eating any glucose. So yes, you will see weight loss, but the problem is that you do need some insulin, and carbohydrates, when processed correctly, can be very beneficial for your metabolism. So you're leaving money on the table by only treating the symptom instead of fixing the root cause. So now I'm not saying protein is bad, but protein, if your metabolism's already broken, then protein keeps it stuck. In my opinion, what breaks most people's metabolism, what causes that imbalance in the mitochondria, is caused by unsaturated fats, particularly omega-6 fatty acids, which is found in industrial seed oils. So, these are fats that mammals eat to go into hibernation, and it happens based on how the mitochondria processes this fuel. It signals the metabolism to slow down and for weight gain to occur. So this is not going to be beneficial for people who are struggling to lose weight. And what happens is, even after you're done eating those seed oils and you start avoiding them, if you're still eating too much protein, it keeps you stuck. So not only did I remove those seed oils, but now I was pulling back on the protein to start reversing the process. So what were the lessons that I learned from all my dieting attempts? What worked best for me? What really kind of lined up between the science and my own results? So my first takeaway is that pragmatism is key. If your diet leaves you depressed, miserable, hungry, frustrated, distracted, it's not sustainable. I do not agree with the mentality that people should just be dietary martyrs, that, they're just miserable and they deal with it and they grind through. I don't think that's a good way to live life. It certainly adds to stress, and people already have plenty of stress in their lives, so why would we put ourselves into a diet that adds to that? Not all calories are created equal. Not all fats are created equal. Protein is best in moderation. So, one of the things that you heard that really drove the whole calorie counting dieting was that it doesn't matter what you eat. You can have 2,000 calories a day in chocolate chip cookies, or 2,000 calories a day in a well-balanced diet or 2,000 calories a day just eating mayonnaise and beef all day. It didn't matter. It was all calories. And that really stuck around for a long time. Thank goodness there's more research now, particularly in animal models, that shows that no, if you control for calories and give different nutrient profiles, you get different results. So it's not just about calories; it's about what types of calories are you eating, and then not all fats are created equal. So that was a big distinction between just being low carb versus figuring out why the red meat carnivore worked better. When I was eating beef and lamb and venison and things like that, I was eating meats from animals that broke down those harmful seed oils. Whereas if I was eating things like fatty chicken thighs or bacon, or I was putting ranch and Italian dressing on my salads, and or mayonnaise or whatever it is I was eating, those are all seed oil based fats, and they stimulate cravings. They promote weight gain. They slow down the metabolism. So not all fats are created equal. You're not going to have the same outcome if you're having 50 grams of fat from beef or dairy versus 50 grams of fat from a jug of canola oil. It's just not the same. And then protein is best in moderation. Protein is good, but there is such a thing as too much. You only need so much. And this is me speaking as somebody who lifts pretty heavy, and I have no trouble getting stronger in the gym. So you don't need that much protein, and it really starts to work against you when you start having it as too high a percentage of your calories. This is especially true if you're already overweight, if you already have a broken metabolism, if your mitochondria are already not functioning properly. The last thing you want to do is keep your metabolism broken by continually consuming large quantities of protein. And when I say protein, I'm talking about branched chain amino acids that are very prevalent in meats, but also grains and beans and things like that. So the first lesson: satiety equals sustainability. If I'm not hungry and miserable and frustrated and stressed and depressed and fantasizing about the foods that I wish I could eat, it's going to be a lot easier for me to stick to the diet. Sustainability is so important. If you're on a diet where you're not happy after your meal, you're on the wrong diet. I'm sorry, that's just how it is. I don't believe in people abusing themselves indefinitely just to achieve some kind of outcome. Counting and measuring adds stress. I've never liked the idea that I have to break out a scale or a calculator every time I'm ready to eat a meal. It is overwhelming. It takes away from practicality. I don't look forward to a meal process that involves that. So not a fan. And again, this goes back to, if it's not user friendly, it's not a good diet. Deprivation equals deficiency. So when I wasn't eating the proper portions of carbohydrates, I was creating imbalances and breaking my metabolism. When my insulin sensitivity was not working correctly, I created mineral absorption issues. People who go on low calorie diets that are too low start to create their own metabolic headwind. They slow their own metabolism because the body's smart, and it knows that if you're starving yourself, it has to cut overhead expenses. So that's not good for the long term if we want to keep our metabolism revved up. And then really what we want to do is choose foods that set our weight loss on autopilot. So what do I mean by that? What that means is, what I care about is eating the types of foods that satiate me, that I don't have to overthink, I don't have to count and measure. I naturally want to eat the right amounts of that food so that I feel full, satisfied, well nourished, and they keep my body weight under control. That's how every diet that works, in my opinion, should be designed. There's some discipline involved. Of course, I would love a piece of cheesecake. Of course, I would love a basket of tortilla chips, right? There's always some element of sacrifice, but you can still find other meals that you enjoy and satisfy you and make the diet journey much more tolerable. So, and then, we're talking about not all calories are created equal, right? One thing that always bothered me is it's just when people, it's such a toxic oversimplification, calories in, calories out. And it's like when you're building a fire pit, it's not just about how much wood you have, right? It's what type of wood do you have? Do you have wet wood or dry wood? New wood or old wood? Do you have big logs or kindling, right? Because depending on the type of wood you have, you could be smothering the fire rather than stoking it, right? And your metabolism is the same way. It's not just about calories. If you eat certain types of fats or certain nutrient ratios, you're going to smother your metabolism. Whereas if you eat other types of nutrient profiles, even if the calories are the same, you're going to be revving up your metabolism. So the bigger the fire, the more you can burn, and which means the more you can eat, which means the more fun the diet is. So what happens is when you eat certain fuels, you create that imbalance in the mitochondria, and that is what's known as reductive stress. There are molecules in the mitochondria that where if you're burning the right fuel, you maintain a right balance of those, and you can keep the fire going. Whereas if you burn dirty fuel, things that they don't burn cleanly in the mitochondria, they start to have a bottlenecking effect that slows the metabolism down more and more, and causes more weight gain, insulin resistance issues, and it breaks your glucose metabolism. So that means that certain fats are useful, certain fats are less useful. Certain carbs are useful, certain carbs are less useful. Same thing with proteins. So this takes a closer look into fats, in particular why not all fats are created equal. Unsaturated fats cause reductive stress, and that's that imbalance I'm talking about, where the molecules in the mitochondria are not at the proper equilibrium. Things start to break down. You don't burn glucose and fuel as efficiently. Your glucose metabolism becomes broken. You start retaining more body fat, and animals that eat these fats usually do so around the winter, or right in preparation for the winter or the dry season, depending on the part of the world they live in. And that's because these seed fats and these nut fats are most prevalent right before that hibernation season, right? So you'll see squirrels fattening up on acorns, or black bears fattening up on acorns. Even bears that eat salmon, that omega-3 is a polyunsaturated fat. It's still, when you eat a large enough quantity, promotes weight gain and metabolic slowdown. So we don't want to eat fats that slow our metabolism down. We want to eat fats that rev the metabolism up. So that's really important to understand. Not all fats are created equal. When I do eat fat, I'm on a lower fat diet right now, but even when I eat more fat, I'm sticking to saturated fats. I'm sticking to fats that come from beef, dairy, coconut, cacao, butter, tallow, ghee, cheese, things like that. And what I'm staying away from is the soybean oil, the canola oil, corn, safflower, sunflower, all of those industrial seed oils that human beings were never really meant to consume in such large quantities. So I don't want to be like a hibernating squirrel. I don't want to be like a hibernating bear. I want to be up and running and with a fully revved up metabolism. So, and then going to the last part, we're talking about the branched chain amino acids. How I don't blame protein for breaking a metabolism, but it can cause you to stay stuck even when you stop eating those fats that promote weight gain. So it's not just enough to cut out the seed oils. If you're still trying to burn too much protein, if you're getting too many calories from particularly muscle meats, legumes, beans, grains, dairy, right? They're all very high in branched chain amino acids, and in particular, it's isoleucine and valine. It shows to keep the metabolism broken, keep that imbalance maintained that you're trying to fix. So this is the basis for which you'll hear about protein restriction diets. And protein's important. I don't think you should cut it out long term, but it may make sense for people to go through a short-term protocol to help as a way to restore their glucose metabolism. So temporary restriction and then future moderation, that makes a lot of sense to me. Now they just changed the food pyramid, so now they're putting protein at the top. That makes zero sense to me. Protein's great once your metabolism is already healthy and fixed, because then you can burn protein efficiently and it doesn't cause weight gain. But if your metabolism's still broken, it's not necessarily a good move to up the protein, because it's going to maintain this mitochondrial deregulation that you're trying to fix. So, and again, we're talking about real world examples. Bears and rodents fatten up on seeds and nuts. They rely on the fact, and it's the same process in the mitochondria. They rely on that metabolic slowdown, that shift from faster to a slower metabolism, where it's easier for them to store calories as fat. We want the opposite if we're trying to lose weight. We want to go in the opposite direction. We can also look at how some of the healthiest populations historically have thrived on high-starch diets, right? So talking about the new 2026 food pyramid, they're now pretty much demonizing grains, and I understand, there's concern about how they're grown and what's added to them. There's grains, in my opinion, get blamed because they're usually consumed with seed oils, and it's the seed oils that's really causing the problem. If you're having Pringle potato chips or Ritz crackers that are loaded with soybean oil, you can't really just blame the carbs, because you're not eating a pure starch. And so when we look at France, and France is known for a very rich diet, a lot of saturated fat from dairy, a lot of starch from wheat, and so we're talking croissants, we're talking butter, we're talking beef stews and cream-based sauces and all these things, and yet the French were never fat. Historically, they were very lean, very healthy. They had low rates of metabolic illness. So the traditional recommendations that society's been trying to follow doesn't really match up with what we're seeing in the history of France. And if we look at Okinawa, so pre-World War II, Okinawa, a very traditional diet, very high starch, lots of sweet potato, also lots of rice. They did eat plenty of pork, but it was pastured pork. So if you feed a pig a healthier diet, you don't have a lot of the harmful fats stored in their fat, where compared to today's commercially raised pigs. So they were eating plenty of saturated fat from pork and coconut. They were eating plenty of starch from rice and sweet potato. They had moderate protein, not a crazy amount, but also some fish in there, and vegetables, etc. So again, we have a high starch, high saturated fat, environment where nobody was experiencing problems, but then post World War II, Western processed foods start to enter the equation, and they see a decrease in lifespan. They see more metabolic illness, diabetes, insulin resistance, obesity, things like that. So again, the conventional wisdom is not matching what we're witnessing. And then Scandinavian, we always hear about Mediterranean diet. Oh, the Mediterranean diet's great. And the Mediterranean diet certainly is much better than the standard American diet because it's less seed oils, more extra virgin olive oil. It's not all bad. You're better off eating real nuts and seeds than chemically extracted seed oils. So it does make some sense, but Scandinavia is healthier on average than the Mediterranean countries. They have on average longer lifespans, lower body mass indexes. They're leaner. There's less metabolic illness there. Rates of diabetes and insulin resistance are quite a bit higher in Mediterranean countries like Spain and Portugal and in Greece and things like that. So to me, it boggles my mind that people aren't going on the Scandinavian diet, which is much higher in saturated fat. They eat more cheeses and dairy and things like that. So we have all these real world examples of things that aren't matching what we've been told growing up. And so I understand why people are frustrated with the old food pyramid, but the truth is people never really ate the old food pyramid. The standard American diet was much higher in fat than what the food pyramid recommended. And the real issue was that it was the wrong types of fats. They were, if you look at a picture of McDonald's from like 1970s, everybody online was thin. And they were walking in and they were getting French fries fried in beef tallow and, real beef, real burgers, real bread. And nobody was having a problem. But now you walk into a McDonald's and they're frying everything in soybean oil. And you can tell that people who eat there regularly, on average, are not doing that great metabolically. So, we really have to reevaluate and we really have to think critically about what our eyes and our ears and history and mechanical science is telling us, because it seems like we've moved from one bad idea to another bad idea, and it's just not matching what the nuances of the conversation are telling us. So anyway, this is why I eat the way I do today, is because I've been a dietary guinea pig, and I've kept reading, kept learning. I've tracked the conversation and the science as it's evolved. And what we're learning now is that, calories matter, but so does the type of foods that you're eating, the types of fats, the types of carbohydrates, the types of proteins. And this all has to be taken into account because it will make or break you when it comes to satiety. It will make or break you when it comes to how fast or slow your metabolism is. It will make or break whether or not you can burn carbohydrates and proteins effectively. So, and this is what I plan to keep talking about as we meet up in our group month after month. I don't think that my way is the only way. I see some people, they do better on carnivore diets, and I see other people, they do better on higher starch diets, and then I see other people that do okay with higher protein. So I don't want to be, this purist, but I do think that for most people, paying attention to what the science is telling us and what history has told us is going to be more beneficial than a lot of parroted conventional wisdom that hasn't really been supported based on how things have gone over the past several decades. So anyway, I hope you find this interesting. I really hope that whoever's watching this gets involved in the group. I'm happy to help, but I'm also happy to hear and learn. I like to hear other people's stories and see what's worked for them. at the end of the day, I want whatever works to be what people find. I'm happy any type of success story, regardless how you got there. I'm gonna be ears open and listen to your experience. So, thanks for joining me. Please check out the video description if you're watching this on YouTube. It's got all the other places that you can connect with us, stay immersed and involved with the group. And I really appreciate you watching this video with me today. Take care, and I hope you have a great 2026.